All right, hello everyone. I'm sure we'll get some more people coming in here. I know classes end at 12:20, and this is kind of a far building for a lot of people, but for the sake of time, I want to go ahead and jump into it, and we'll get us started off. So hopefully you're here because you're interested or you want to learn about career fairs and getting prepared for them in the best way possible. If not, I will not be offended if you step outside the classroom right now, but yeah, that's the target for today. Feel free to grab a couple sandwiches, starting off with like 2 per person. If you're still hungry after that, feel free to walk out there just quietly and grab more if there is some left over. We just want to make sure there's enough for everyone. I'm recording and streaming this session, so I always give this caveat at the beginning. This microphone is decently powerful. It can usually pick up people asking questions in the back of the classroom, so your voice might be recorded on something later that we'll post to our website or for those that are listening online. That's not centered. I want to start off with a question. I'm going to pull this up on a different screen here. Just to get curiosity from the people that are in the class today, or if you're watching online, if you want to go to pollev.com/icareers, you can also text in and just to see how many career fairs you've attended. Now let me exit this view and get a better view for you. There we go. So for some reason in the PowerPoint, it's looking a little funky. But yeah, this will help me kind of gauge too, if you're more of a newer student, maybe you just got admitted to the program, or even for students that have been here if you haven't checked out career fairs yet. So yeah, for anyone walking in, if you want to quickly take this poll, as well as students that might be online, pollev.com/icareers. You can also text for this one. I would recommend using the pollev.com/icareers if you have a tablet or mobile phone or a computer, just because a question later will use that functionality and not the text. All right, so we've got 16 responses. We've got a couple people with a little bit more experience in the 3 to 5 range, but it looks like the majority of the class has not been to a career fair or maybe just been to 1 or 2. So that's great. I'm glad that you're all coming here and getting ready. You probably saw my text reminders, if you're signed up for those, that it's pretty nuts. There's already more than 5 career fairs coming up, starting, I believe, on the 9th, which is next week. So right around the corner. So thank you all for attending this. Ooh, I forgot that I'm not on the slide anymore. Next question. What are you hoping to get out of a career fair or the career fairs? I think I know the obvious choice, but I, again, just want to pull the classroom to see, because I think there are a lot of things that you can get out of career fairs. So same thing, if you want to pull up your phone, mobile device, laptop, and just submit. On this one, you should be able to submit multiple options. Oh, I didn't activate it. There we go. My bad. There we go. So you can submit multiple things if you are looking for more than just one opportunity, if you want to network, so on and so forth. So I'll give you a little bit of time to pull this one up so we can see kind of what the classroom's thinking, as well as the students that are watching this online. Oh, nice. We already had over 40 people respond. Awesome. So obtain an internship, obtain a job are definitely the top 2. I'm guessing it's mostly new students that are in, since internship is the #1 choice, and that's typically going to be for people that have a year left of school. There are some companies that will hire interns if you're graduating, but it's more common if you have a year left or at least a quarter left, coming back in the fall. Obtaining a job, networking, information gathering, and required to do it for a class. Okay, so there are some people that are required to do it for a class. I don't see anyone that chose the option other, but I'd be curious if any of you can think of other ideas of why it might be useful to go to a career fair. Thoughts? Yeah?
Maybe just to practice talking to employers.
Yeah, that's really good.
Marketing yourself, even if you don't plan on getting a job with them, just practice.
Yeah, and I'm going to repeat that too, just for the online and the recording. That answer was just to practice informally marketing yourself, talking to employers. I think it's a good way exactly for that. It can help prepare you for interviews, figuring out kind of your elevator pitch, and we're going to get into that too. Any other thoughts? You kind of had a thought, yeah.
Yes. Evaluating myself, speaking to people and understanding what are the requirements probably comes under networking.
Yeah, and then yeah, some of these are kind of general terms, but kind of evaluating yourself and maybe what people are looking for and how you're pitching yourself to them. an interesting thing, I've had students that have gone to career fairs in October and they've gotten calls back in like May and April. So it's kind of nuts that people have like kept their business cards or kept their resumes and they've gotten called later. I think that kind of goes under networking. For information gathering, if you have no idea what you want to do, that's completely fine. If you know and you have an exact route of who you're going to talk to, great. But if you're trying to figure it out, I think that career fairs can be a good way to talk to people and talk to recruiters and figure out what they're looking for. That can give you an idea of, one, like we were just talking about, pitching yourself, and two, maybe figuring out personal projects, classes, or anything like that that can kind of build your portfolio, your resume, so that you might be more recruitable next time around. Or, like I was saying, you could potentially get a connection that might reach out to you later on when you do have that experience the same year. I'm going to pull up the next one. No need for questions at this time, but if you do have a question throughout the session, we'll have a couple times built in. If you've seen our presentations before, you might be used to this now. But we have, I think, 2 places where Nayang and I will be answering questions for students. So if you're online or in the classroom, you can submit questions here. You can upvote. So if it's the same question as you have, I prefer just upvoting it rather than submitting another question. You should be able to see on your phone other people's suggestions. So now I'm going to go back into here. See if the slides are a little bit more normal looking. For more lengthy questions, you can always email us at icareers@uw.edu, and either Nayang, myself, or Cameron, our program coordinator, will respond. So why do employers attend? We just talked about what's beneficial for students. Thoughts on why an employer would want to go to a career fair? I know you all know the answer, yeah.
Because they get to see prospective candidates in person, talk to them, rather than just looking at their resume online.
Yeah. Yep, they can meet candidates and they can actually get people face to face. It's really useful when we talk to employers that want to recruit from like the iSchool, for example. They don't really understand the iSchool maybe at first, but then when they actually start having multiple conversations, they figure out the projects that you're all working on, the classes, and it's really useful. Other ideas for why employers are attending? Yeah. Yeah, meet a bunch of students at once. It's an efficient way for them to meet a lot of potential candidates. And also that goes for students too. It's like, it's kind of interesting if you think about it. It's one big venue for you to meet a ton of different employers. That would probably take a lot of outreach if you're trying to individually go to all these places. So some of the stats that we have from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, they collect a lot of data from people like us, as well as programs that are recruiting specifically from universities. My face is kind of in the way at the top here. But yeah, almost all of them providing job openings and information. So jobs, directed field work, internships, and soliciting information. They want to build visibility on campus. So some of them might actively be hiring. Others are building a pipeline. That's what we used to say in the recruiting business, which is basically getting to meet students. And we might want to either contact you or have you contact us maybe in February. We know we're actually going to be hiring, but we want to go on campus early so that we can get ahead of that. And so that when we're ready, when a position actually comes through and gets approved. 84% talking about company benefits and perks. And then 13% actually interview students and make job offers. So if you've gone to an event before, I know that there wasn't a whole lot of people on here, but you might be surprised that a recruiter might have a really good conversation with you and pull out a calendar and say, like, what times could you interview tomorrow? We have these spots. It's not a whole lot of them, but there are a number of employers that are on campus that might be flying from out of town, and they reserve interview rooms at the main career center or at the Foster Career Center or even at the hub, and they might want to interview you. So it might be a good idea to see what your calendar is like the next day, but it's pretty cool when that happens. And let me move this again. Of the interview requests that happen, so this is a subset of that roughly 13%, about half of them happened within 2 weeks. Another third a little farther out, like within a month, and then 13%, 4 to 6 weeks. And then I had even mentioned like people getting contacted months afterwards. So that's possible. I wouldn't expect getting contacted that late in the year, but it's nice if like you built in some time to network at the beginning and it pays out like that in the end. So what to expect? So if you've never been to one, I thought that visually this could be useful for you all. So that bottom right picture is actually taken from an iSchool career fair from a couple years ago. It's in the Hub Ballroom, and that's where the majority of our big fairs are going to be held. So you kind of picture what it's going to look like. That specific event had about 40, 45 employer booths Whereas a career fair like the business fair or the science and engineering is going to have over 100 in the same space. So you can imagine it's going to be super packed with people and employers. There's typically longer lines for the really popular employers. So I'd heard Microsoft at our fair had like a 45-minute line. But then there's some employers that have really quick lines. You might be able to go to the front right away. Usually when you approach the front, you'll see a couple people representing the company, like you can see here, Fast Enterprises. They'll likely want to hear about you, maybe grab your resume, start asking you some questions about what you've been doing, what you're interested in, what do you know about Fast, why would you want to apply here? And you never quite know who you're going to meet with. It might be a recruiter, it might be an engineer, it might be a librarian. It can be a diversity of different people. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm thinking about like your elevator pitch and how you talk to people if you don't quite know who they are at first. It also gets really loud and hot. So that's something to think about. The pro and con of the hub, they're eco-friendly, so they don't have air conditioning. But if you can imagine that many people packed into a room, it gets super hot. So I'll talk about what to dress. Oh, that's actually a perfect segue. What to wear here. So my original thought here is like, try to be really comfortable. I get really anxious and sweaty already if I'm networking and talking to people. And if I'm in a really hot room and wearing like a jacket or a tie, it just makes it worse for me. So try to still remain professional, but I would say as comfortable as possible. So typically you'll want to wear something clean, wrinkle-free, wear light layers. So you can wear a button-up shirt, a nice blouse or top, skirt, khakis, slacks. You can definitely wear a blazer or a suit or a tie if you'd like, but I'm just warning you, it probably will get very hot. I'm someone that runs hot, so I don't like to do that. I'd probably wear something similar to what I'm wearing now if I was going to a career fair. What you'll want to avoid in general is wearing jeans or wearing sneakers or anything that's just a little bit less common. You'll often see, like in the Seattle market or in the Bay Area, people wearing jeans to work. And you actually might get interviewed by someone that's at one of the booths that's wearing jeans. That's okay that you'll be dressed up more than them, but for a first impression, I would be more on the safe side and more of like a business casual look. Plan to leave your backpack somewhere. Again, I was talking about how congested it gets and there's tons of people. So if you can imagine walking through a crowd of people with a backpack, you might be whacking a lot of people and it's going to be kind of agitating. Some of the career fairs don't let you bring backpacks in, so you'll have to read through the event description. But it's nice to plan ahead and either go to the commuter lounge in the hub to see if you can drop off your stuff there that's in the first floor, or maybe you can drop it off with a friend, or you can stop by your house before attending. But usually there's not a designated place to leave your bags. So I think that that's just something worth noting. You can typically bring like a small bag, but like a larger backpack. It's going to be bulkier and shouldn't be brought in. So what to bring? Probably have at least 10 resumes, depending on how long you have. I'd usually recommend trying to target maybe 5 to 7 employers that you're going to see. So it's nice to have a few extra in case you talk to a random employer or one employer happens to have both people free and they both want to look at your resume at the same time. You don't want to bring one around. I've had some students that only brought one and they hand it to the first person and then they keep it. And then they're like, oh man, I have nothing to hand to anyone else now. Or the first person might like write some notes on where they can improve and give it back to them. And you also don't want to give that to a new employer. Right, so have roughly 10 printed resumes. I wrote that some can be targeted. This is something I'll go into more detail on, but if you're targeting a certain company that's coming, I normally wouldn't say this for online applications, but it can be okay to mention something specifically like an objective line or in your summary of qualifications that you're specifically interested in working for that organization. I've talked to a recruiter before who was telling me a little bit her methodology of what she does at career fairs. She holds on to a lot of the paper copies, and then she quickly has some sort of method of marking if it's a good student, like with a smiley face or a star, and then she puts it in the pile because she'll have hundreds to go through later. She specifically noted that if she sees something tailored to her company, that kind of automatically gets a note. So it can be something that helps differentiate you and makes you stand out to an employer. You want a pen or a pencil, I'd definitely say a pen in case the pencil breaks, just to write some notes down. And a notebook or Padfolio, which you can see a lot of the students in the middle are holding here. It's a little bit dark, but that will give you, it's going to look a little bit more professional, even just a normal folder, so that your resumes don't crumple up and you're handing something crumpled to the employer. Yeah, you don't want to just like shove a bunch of papers into your bag and pull those out. Looks like someone might have like blown their nose on it. Come with questions to ask the employers. That's a good way to keep the conversation going. And I'd say business cards are definitely optional. Some employers will say, I can't take your resume, just apply online. It might be a company policy, but they might be able to take business cards. I think it looks professional. It's not necessarily needed. There are some student orgs that make business cards. I think SEBA does, the Science and Engineering Business Association, if you join the group. Or if you want to get UW branded ones, UW Creative Communications can do that, and they'll have the official UW logo. Again, it's a plus. It's a nice to have. I don't think it's 100% necessary. Typically, a one-page resume is preferred by most employers. If yours is a little bit longer, maybe you have more experience, I'd say maybe print front and back rather than having two different sheets stapled together. And if you need more resume help, we've hosted a workshop. It's online now, and you can find templates from this link. I'm not going to go too deep into resumes since we'd already had a couple topics on that one. So in a couple slides, I have a few more before I'll answer questions, but remember, if you do have questions, go to pollev.com/iCareers and you can submit those. So before the career fair, you're going to want to research employers and positions and try to figure out if there's ones that are specifically like you might bring some kind of skill set or interest to them. Prepare your story. So I think going through their position, looking at the organization, and then looking at what you bring. If you did see our presentations on workshop or our presentations on resumes and cover letters, we talked about a highlighter test, or maybe looking at the top 2 things that you bring and how that's relevant to an employer. That's a good place to start. You can kind of jot those things down and then plan how you're going to navigate through the fair. So let me actually give you an example of how I would do these steps. For researching organizations, you can find all of the upcoming career fairs from the UW Career Center's website, not the iSchool's website, not iCareers, the main career and internship center. So the link is right here. They list links to all of the individual registrations and information about the fair. Then once you go through there, you can do further research on companies, like looking through the blogs, their social media presence, their career pages, and I think Glassdoor. Does anyone use Glassdoor in here? Good amount of people are familiar with Glassdoor. Glassdoor is great for preparing for interviews, looking up salary information. They also do reviews on companies. And so they'll actually combine everything. So if you want to look at like a review of, let's say, Microsoft, they'll comb through all of the comments and they'll highlight some of the pros and cons overall at the very top, so you don't have to do a whole lot of work. So for me, if I'm planning to go to the business career fair, that's the earliest one. It's coming up on October 9th, 2 to 6 in the Hub Ballroom. I would first go to that career events page, which would link me to Handshake. It says all the information for the business career fair is here. I go into Handshake. At the very top, you can see there's an events tab, and there's a lot of events coming up. I scroll down to the business fair, and then it will show you a screenshot of what the Hub Ballroom is going to look like with numbered tables and how that correlates to employers, and a list of employers over here with filtering options. So this is where I would start off getting basic information about employers. You can see all the names of those that are coming, and then you can filter by things like if they're able to hire international candidates, if they're hiring full-time or internships, what major or master's program are they recruiting, and so on. I don't believe it has a keyword search, but it does have these other filters. What I'll say about that is the information is only as good as the people that actually registered. So if you think about a career fair in October, registration probably opened up back in June, and an employer might have signed up then saying, you know, I think I can hire interns by this time. I'm not 100% sure. Here's some information about our company and what I think we're going to be going into. So it might not be 100% accurate, but I think it's a good place to start. The other specific thing with that is typically employers, if they're not sure if they can hire international students, they'll just go to the default option, which is US citizens. So it's a good start for international students. You can click on who will hire them, and it will show you a list, but there's likely more to that can hire. Just the recruiter or whoever signed up at the beginning might not have known, so they went with the default option. So then I've gone through, let's say I'm picking out a company. Here's my example, and I'll pull down the blue side, the dark blue side, so you can see some information. But I'll start off with just basic information on the company, maybe the size, the mission or the vision, if they're hiring, and some information I can find that might be good or bad. So an actual example from what I was looking through on the business career fair is a company called ClassPass. So I started out with looking at some basic information about the company that I found just in Handshake. They've been around for about 5 years. The purpose is to basically, it's like an app if you want to try a bunch of different fitness programs rather than just signing up for like Orange Theory or Hot Yoga. They partner with all these places so you can jump around and make it really easy. So it's still kind of in startup mode. It's a mid-sized company now. And then I looked at their mission and vision statement. Usually this is written in kind of business terms, so I dumbed it down for like what's just the basic thing. They want to make it easy for people to live healthy, happy lives. I found some hiring information in Handshake. It says they're hiring interns, but I can't find a job in Handshake or on their website, but I did see new grad engineer for a full-time role. And then I did a little bit more creeping on Glassdoor to find some pros and cons, as well as LinkedIn. I actually see that there's a UW alumni working there. Only one though, which is interesting, and where their locations are. So now my question for you is, why would I even go about doing this? Like, how is this useful for me? Yeah, in the back.
To identify who you would want to talk to or network with extensively at the career fair.
Yeah, to figure out, I'm just going to repeat it again for the microphone, to figure out who I'd want to extensively network with and talk to at a career fair. Any other thoughts with it? Yeah, so I might start off with this, and I like read ClassPass, and I look up basic information. I'm like, this sounds like something boring. I would not want to work here. I might immediately go on. But if it got my interest at first, then I might do a little bit more research. I think it can help show that I did research and might make me stand out as a candidate, right? So if I approach them, I might say, you know, I've been looking through, I'm really familiar with your company, and you have an internship listed, but I can't find that on your website or Handshake. I do see that you're hiring new grad engineers. Are you also by chance hiring engineer interns? Or I looked on LinkedIn and I see that you actually only have one UW alumni that's working at your company. What made you decide to come to UW for a career fair? And why the business career fair if you're hiring specifically engineering students, right? It can show a lot of things. Like, I wouldn't point it like negatively, but you can ask questions about like that show that you did your research and you're interested in the company. Okay, I'm gonna pull up the other screen because PowerPoint's looking real ugly with it. So question time. Let's make this full screen. Okay. That's weird. Does it look like this on your screen?
Yeah, this is good.
I don't know what's up at the top. Okay. As students, what kind of information can we put on our business cards? So typical information would be like your name. Some people put the program that they're in and the year that they're going to be graduating, and then contact information like your phone and your email. Optionally, you could put like a website or a LinkedIn. Some students really want to brand this, and they'll put like aspiring UX designer or technology consultant, which is just fine. But if you change your career path, like, you'll just probably want to print new business cards because you branded yourself a certain way. Oh, there we go. Something just changed. But that's the basic information that I would probably include on a business card if you are going to go with one.
Thankfully, we answered all the other questions, or Dean did.
Yeah, I was like, I know some of these came in earlier, so Creative Communications is one place you can get them printed, UW, and SEBA, the Science and Engineering Business Association. We talked about this. 10 resumes is good. We did talk about, finding lists of companies. We covered this as well. Yeah, I think this is really good. So the business career fair, it's going to have a lot of opportunities like finance, marketing, and all that. I think that they will have some pretty good iSchool related positions too. They're probably not going to have library employers, but if you're a library science student interested in the industry, it might be a good place to look. And I do think it's a good place, like if you're just going to practice your pitch, especially going to maybe one of these that's upcoming before the end of the quarter so that you're ready and you've experienced one before the iSchool career fair, which happens in the winter. Cool. Well, I'll come back to questions later if you have more. I'll skip that one for now and save it for the end.
There's a question, should we wear fragrances?
Yeah, you want to address that one?
Principally, you want to be positive to interact with, right? So if you need a fragrance to conceal your natural odor, it's probably a good option, but you also don't want it to be overwhelming. The benefit of a career fair, fragrance decision versus an interview is a career fair is usually in a larger room. So you have a little more space between you and the other person. If it was an interview, you would have to tone it down even more, or people will be a lot more sensitive to the smell, right? Does that answer the question? Yeah. But if you naturally, like wake up smelling like flowers, you may not need one. And I know some people just wake up like that.
Thank you. All right, so planning your strategy. So I'd already talked about maybe targeting some employers and examples on how to do that. Depending on your time, I had mentioned 5 to 7 is good. Probably if you have a few hours. If you have 1 hour or less, maybe you do closer to 3. And then locate your targeted employers. So I showed you that map that showed up in Handshake. Some might not have that in advance, but they might have a program that they give you. Definitely recommend taking a minute to either like just look at the map, or if it's on paper, maybe mark down your path, because once you get in there, it's going to be pretty hard to navigate. There's a lot of people, a lot of noise, and depending on how tall you are, it might be hard to see over and where the employer booths are. I might not have as much of a problem as Naomi with that one. If you have less than an hour, I would probably actually say target a high priority employer first. If you have more than an hour, it's really nice to go to someone that you don't care about as much to practice your pitch and start off. So if you're targeting 5 to 7, maybe if you stack ranks number 6 or 7, start with that one first. I recommend eavesdropping as well, which sounds very weird to say, but you can listen around to how other conversations are going and look for how the employer's reactions are and what is it that they're doing that's making them have what appears to be a good conversation. And I will show you an example of some conversations of students at a career fair. And then also be open. So I talked a lot about researching and going to specific employers, but you might have a random company that talks to you. In that case, it's okay to not know a whole lot of information about them, or maybe you've already gone to your top employers and now you're just testing out and seeing who else is out there. That's just fine too. So as you're approaching employers, you come up with your plan. You want to wait in line and wait for that employer to acknowledge you. You don't want to cut someone off. Typically, they spend about 3 to 7 minutes talking to people. I'd say 7's a little bit on the longer end. They're pretty quick conversations, so you have to be pretty succinct with what you're talking about. Give a brief introduction about yourself, and if you've done your research, you can kind of mention a couple things about your background and how that might either match the employer or if it matches a specific position that they're recruiting for. Don't apologize for lack of experience. So I saw that we have a lot of people here that this is going to be the first career fair. I'd take it. You might be a new student. You might not have a lot of background experience, or you're just starting out the program. Do not apologize for not having experience, but rather highlight what you do have. So for example, maybe if you're a first year informatics student and you want to get into engineering, you haven't had much experience yet, but you've probably taken CSC 142, 143, maybe you're enrolled in data structures and algorithms, and you have a specific project that you're really interested in, or you have some kind of reasoning of why you want to go into that field. So I would highlight that rather than what you don't have. Here's some example questions, particularly useful if you're just trying to get the conversation going, or if you're someone that doesn't like to talk about yourself a lot, ask questions about them to get them going. I honestly think the best questions are going to come from your research, because then you're going to have really specific things that show the employer you took the initiative to actually look around. But these questions can be good as well. There's a couple on here specific for diversity too, which can give you insights into the culture about the company and some ways you can ask about maybe there are certain affinity groups that the employer supports. I'll leave this to your discretion on how comfortable you are asking those types of questions, but it is a good way to get insights into the employers. Some components of introducing yourself that you can include, potentially your major, your master's program, of course your name, a couple strengths that you bring, show enthusiasm, and I think finishing with a question is really useful because it gets the conversation continuing. So I'll give you a quick example, and then I actually want to show you an example. So I'd mentioned a couple of these. I'm going to use ClassPass since I did that research project in ClassPass. So let's say I'm an informatics student looking at ClassPass. I might approach them and say, hey, I'm a junior in the informatics program at UW. Like, do you know much about informatics? They only hired one UW alumni, and informatics, as we know, is not always known from all employers. They might say yes. If they say no, it's like, okay, well, quickly, my program studies the relationship between people, information, and technology. I'm focusing on really technical coursework. I've had Intro to Java Programming 1 and 2, and I'm currently in data structures and algorithms. Also, kind of outside of school, I'm like a big health nut. I go to yoga 3 times a week, and that's how I originally actually heard about ClassPass. I saw on your website that you're hiring full-time engineers, but also listed internships. So I'm curious if you're going to be hiring engineering internships, or maybe you're hiring something else, right? So I looped in some strengths that I think I'm bringing, because they're probably hiring engineers. I asked it, I made it conversational. I explained what informatics was, like, pretty concisely. And then I asked them a question to get them engaged. I want to show you an example of a student. So this video is a little bit corny, but I think it's useful. As you're watching it, I want you to either jot down some notes or think about what the student's doing that's either good or bad. And then after it's over, it's about a minute, I'm going to ask you for your input on this. Oh, I didn't test the volume. Hopefully that's up.
Hi, I'm Siska Idori. I'm a first year SMBLA student, and I have a previous experience with Acme Plastic as a facility assistant. I'm currently looking for a summer internship. Do you have any spot available? And do you sponsor international students?
We'll consider sponsoring the right candidate, and we do have summer internships in logistics. Currently, those positions are posted on our website. Have you gotten a chance to look at those positions already?
No.
Okay. Essentially, what we're trying to do is improve the amount of time from when an order is placed to when it's delivered. We're a global company, so we're focusing primarily on international shipments. Can you tell me a little bit why you're even interested in logistics?
Well, I'm a really detail-oriented person and also really good with numbers. Can I leave my resume with you?
You know, I actually can't take your resume today, but what you can do is you can go onto our website and you can submit it online for a position that you're interested in.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. You know, I really wanted to get to know this student.
All right. So yeah, again, it's a little bit corny, but I think it's a useful example. What are your thoughts on what she might have done well or not so well there? Yeah, in the back.
She kind of mumbled and kept looking down, and I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like even I couldn't really understand what she was talking about, and I got not the interest.
Yeah, she mumbled and looked down a lot. I think there was like a lack of confidence, and it was hard to follow too because it was a little harder to hear her. She was speaking quietly. Yeah.
She was also fidgeting with her hands.
Yeah, you
that showed that she was nervous, and also she just ran away after the conversation. Didn't actually thank him or ended it with a handshake.
Yeah. So she was visibly nervous, which might happen, but it was very apparent with that one. And then at the end, she kind of ran away. There was no like action, no thanks, nothing like that. Yeah.
She could have been a little more prepared, and she could have said that yes, I did look at all those jobs which were posted online.
Yeah, totally.
She was pretty blunt about it.
She was blunt about not doing research, but it would have been much more useful had she done some research. Because from this guy's perspective, he's like, I'm just answering questions she could easily find online, and it's very apparent that she didn't do any research at all. Yeah, you can.
I just have a question. For example, if it's stunted by a question, is it okay to like kind of lie or just kind of like lose the question?
I guess, so the question is if you get stunted by something and you're not sure how to, I wouldn't make up an answer. I would say like could you like clarify that or like what you mean by that question? Or if it's something that you're not comfortable answering, or you're not sure how to ask, I would just say like, I don't know if I have an example of that if they're asking you a question like that. I don't know if they were going to ask you something that's really going to catch you that off guard. It's typically mostly about like your experience or if you know anything about the company. If you don't, like if it's a random employer, I think it's okay to be honest with it. You don't want to like pretend like you know about the company and then get caught in a lie. So I'd rather have you be like honest at the start than try to lie your way through it. All right, I'm going to show one other thing actually about that one, and here's a little bit of the notes. I think like a lot of you hit this one. She also asked specifically about international students and if they're able to sponsor, which I've heard kind of mixed things. I've actually hosted international student panels, and half of them say that they do that, half of them don't. I think it can come off as kind of like presumptive, like you're already assuming that you're a candidate for the offer if you're asking. So typically I would wait for the actual person to bring it up to you, or maybe it says on their website when you're applying or at the end of the first interview rather than you bringing it up, because it's kind of an awkward topic. I understand some people want to bring it up at the beginning because you don't want to waste your own time, but usually I wouldn't recommend bringing it up in that fashion. So one more example. Actually, you had a question before I go into this one.
When do you have to wait for the person that is prepared to ask for your resume?
Oh yeah.
How does that work?
Usually you'll probably see the motion for it. Like you'll meet them, maybe shake their hand, and a lot of times they'll like reach for it or they'll ask for it. You can also ask them too, like, do you take a resume? Like, I think it was okay that she had asked that and he just said no, and don't try to force it at that point. But yeah, a lot of times you'll see people like just grabbing it. You'll probably see the person in front of you and just kind of emulate what they do, unless they do something inappropriate. But one more example, and same thing, just take some notes or let's get some feedback after this one. It's about a minute.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Cisco Iduri. Nice to meet you today.
Nice
How are
to
you?
meet you. Great. Thank you for asking. It's been a great day. There's a lot of students here who seem to be interested in our open positions.
Yeah, well, really appreciate your time and really excited to see you today. I'm a first year's MBLA student, and I had a previous experience in logistics. It was for Acme Plastic. I was a operation facility assistant. And I actually pursued logistics because I do enjoy analyzing processes and developing way to get a more efficient way around those processes. I'm currently looking for an internship for this summer. So I did dig a little about your company and the position for that supply chain process improvement, but I do have several questions to ask.
Sure. What questions do you have?
Well, I got a little sense of what kind of skill I would develop, but could you explain more about what kind of projects I'll be involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly this summer, what we're focusing on is we're trying to shorten the amount of time from when an order is placed to when it's delivered. We're a global company, so our primary focus is going to actually be on the international shipments.
Oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. Well, in my previous experience, I do have a little bit of that. Like, I did determine the root cause of inefficiencies, but I haven't had any chance to actually put that into plan or implementing that plan. So, is there any additional training for internship, like, to develop that skill?
Yeah, one of the great things about being an intern is you actually get to participate in our monthly professional workshops. Typically, our workshops are focused on things like professional communication, leadership development. You even get an opportunity to work with the new software that we're actually implementing at the company.
Wow, that sounds a really interesting experience for me as an intern. Well, can I leave my resume with you today?
I actually can't take your resume today, but what you can do is you can just go onto our website and you can submit it to one of the positions that you're interested in applying for.
Oh, wow. Yes, that sounds really good. That sounds perfect. Can I have your business card in case I have further questions to ask in the future?
Yeah, of course. Please contact me anytime.
Yes,
any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for your time. I will definitely follow up with you. Well, have a great rest of the day.
Nice
Thank
meeting
you. Bye.
Thanks.
The student made several changes that made her
All right, so yeah, I'm gonna ask you the same thing. What went well or poorly on this one? Yeah.
I'd say you can understand her better, but definitely she was looking for more. She was not more confident. She was not more confident. But then again, some parts of it, she felt a little unsure, I guess, about, she was asking questions. She wasn't bored with them. Like when she started off really strong.
Yeah, I think she was really confident and strong at the start. She did kind of waver off a little bit, which is natural. It shows that I like that it wasn't completely scripted. And I think that part of, even though this is a little corny, that part was a little bit more realistic, and it's probably going to happen. And that's what happens. And I think as you practice more and more, you do get better at talking like that. Other thoughts? Yeah, back over here.
I thought I did really well.
Yeah, she really connected the dots between her past experience and how it was relevant for what this employer was looking for. One thing that I liked too is she started off decently general, and as she learned more, then she got into details. That's useful. You don't want to go into it really scripted and talk about something super technical if you end up talking to like a recruiter or an HR person that's not going to understand that or care about it. So she left it open to then go into details when she actually started asking questions, and she kind of pieced together what she could talk about that was related. Any other thoughts? The last thing that I like that she did is she did ask for the resume, but she still didn't give up, and she found another way. I found a business card. So she found a contact information. She said she was going to thank him or potentially ask some more questions. So I thought that was smart and a nice approach that changed from her first time around. And the questions were good. They were open-ended, which led for more dialogue rather than just a yes, no. All right, so just a few more slides. If you do that, make sure to follow up with employers. NACE, again, who we cited earlier, does expect most employers expect that students will actually follow up with them. So you can ask for business cards or just like an email or who's the most appropriate person to follow up with. This could be if you have questions, or you could mention like, oh, I just want to send a follow-up to thank you for your time today. If you do that, do actually send a follow-up email and you can reiterate your interest. Mention something specific because they're probably meeting somewhere between 50 to like 300 people. So you can say, hey, I met with you at the UW Business Fair. I talked about like my experience with engineering and like how I do yoga, whatever, how I came across your application. Like you said, I've applied online, but I wanted to also attach my resume here for your reference. So they might have told that person to apply online, but it's still like from a recruiter's perspective, if you want to quickly reference it, they probably don't want to go digging through the database to find that person. Like it might be helpful to have it in both areas. That also allows you to have a more targeted resume too. If you had a conversation and you kind of figure out what they're looking for. So like in Midori's case, she might have been able to include more things about process improvements and what she was doing for supply chain. So some final tips, prepare and practice. It makes it so much easier when you're actually there. So go through, research employers, write some things down. If you want, you can use a similar format to that kind of Excel sheet that I had. And if you're using a Padfolio, maybe one side has a bunch of your resumes and the other side has a cheat sheet of employers and who you're going to go to next. Smiling helps ease the tension not only for yourself, but it makes you much more approachable when you're talking to people. So don't forget that part of it. And then make the most out of it. You could potentially get an interview the next day. You could get an internship interview. If not, it's at least a good learning experience to add people to your network and kind of learn about what the industry is looking for. So a lot of upcoming career fairs. So if you got that text, you saw that there's a bunch in fall, like over the next month. So I thought this was a decent visual to show you like the dates that are coming up, with next week having 3 and then later into October and November. Quickly running through some, I think that there's probably opportunities for iSchool students at all of these, but they're going to be focused on different things, right? So the business career fairs are going to have a lot of finance, marketing, accounting, but they might have like technology, consulting, and other roles. Startup career fair is going to have a mixture of things. Engineering, Hiring Expo, and Science and Engineering career fair is probably going to have a lot of technical roles, but I bet they'll have some less technical analyst roles as well. Data science, if you're into data analytics, data science, BI, that's probably the best place. And then the HCDE career fair, pretty good for people that are interested in UX design, front-end engineering, visual communications design roles. Some of these do require registrations, so make sure to actually go to the websites and register if that's the case. Like I know HCDE does, and they have a priority hour for their own students. We'd really love your feedback, so if you could take like a minute to go to this tinyurl.com/navigate CF18 if you're in the classroom or online. It's a quick like 3 questions. It's really helpful for us on tailoring our material for you.
We will leave the slide on here while you take photos / pull up the link on your phone or computer. And in the meantime, I'll answer some of the questions that we've had come up on PolyUB, which I can see on my screen. There's a question here about, is a handshake necessary at the beginning of an interaction? And generally, as you may know, touch is a very powerful connector. Appropriate touch, right? And a handshake is one of the basic ways of developing that physical touch with somebody that you meet. And it's kind of expected in a lot of these first interactions. It leaves a very powerful impression, hopefully a positive impression, right? So a positive impression, a good handshake is someone who, very firmly and confidently, not like vigorously, right? Gives a handshake. Can you give me a handshake? I have gotten a handshake like this, right? Where it's very lacking energy, right? A little bit limp. And to me, I know that wasn't the intention, but it gives the impression of not being excited to meet this person, right? Which is not the impression that you want to give off. So most interactions when you approach someone at the career fair, they will kind of expect the handshake. But of course, you may be in situations where it may not be appropriate. So you don't have to like force it. You don't have to be like handshake, right? So you feel it out. Oftentimes, it's a great way to maintain that connection with someone that you just met. There's also a question here about, is it okay to take notes while listening? Yes, as long as it's not disruptive to the conversation, right? So if you and I have met in a one-on-one advising session, I usually have a piece of paper in front of me and a pen, and I try to write down things that I want to remember that I don't want to interrupt you for right away, right? So a disruptive way to do that might be, right? If I'm hiding behind a screen, or if you bring a notebook that's not so easy to write quickly in, some things are like floppier than others, right? Those are things that can hurt you more than help you. But I think taking notes is a great way to remember the things that you talked about. And that could even help you customize your follow-up communications even further than just, it was great to meet you, thank you for your time, right? You can mention specific things that you talked about in that follow-up communication to help them remember you as well. Handshake, sweaty palms though. Yeah, do what you can. I have friends who put like powder, and like lotion or deodorant, like there's solutions to make it work. Or right before you approach someone, you can slightly do this, right? Or you can carry a handkerchief or napkin in your pocket. Yeah.
I do, like, I suffer from
Yeah.
And I asked my doctor to prescribe me Lysol, which I found out from another friend. It legit is like a miracle.
Awesome.
My hands do not stay.
Awesome. Yeah, so there are solutions.
What was it called? I'll just repeat it. Horizon.
Dry
Drysol.
salt.
Drysol.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Good tip.
If the recruiter has already taken your resume, is it okay to update your resume when following up? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I think it's helpful if you've had a conversation with them and then you're able to make it more tailored. It's easier for them to hold on to the digital copy, honestly. So I think it's just fine to have a slightly different one that you email to them than you may have handed to them in person.
Yeah. There's a question here about following up through LinkedIn versus email. That is an option that you could take, but one potential consequence of that is people have varying levels of how regularly they check their LinkedIn accounts. Email, generally, people are in the practice of checking quite regularly. So if you want a reply or if you want to make sure that you have a good paper trail of your interactions, email is the safest. But LinkedIn is an option too, as long as you're okay with the possibility that it may not be responded to as quickly as you wish. I think we answered the questions about good questions to ask. Allocating time in different lines, most interactions being just a few minutes long. I like what Dean said earlier about if your time allows to try to warm up with someone who's like a medium priority and not your number one choice, so that you can get comfortable with the environment, comfortable sharing your pitch, right? And then being aware of like how many people are waiting at those areas too. So those various factors are things that I take into account when deciding where to go. Any other questions that we haven't? Yeah.
Is it possible to have a sort of a circle around that recruiter to talk about something, or should I just wait in line?
If you can find a way to squeeze in, I like participating in existing conversations. One, because the recruiter probably appreciates it. They're probably answering the same questions or a lot of the same questions. So it helps save their voice and their energy. I guess the other side of that is some people are not as willing to share conversations, which I personally advise against. So if you are already talking with an employer and you see someone right behind you who seems like they want to be a part of the conversation, I would encourage you to make space for them to join the circle, right? To me, that cues team player, awareness, right? Not hogging the person that you think is going to help your situation, right? So I encourage you all to be aware of that. You want to help each other out. You're not competing for each other's time at this moment. And if you see someone already participating, you think there's an appropriate way for you to squeeze in, then I think you should try to. Yeah.
But sometimes I just feel like weird if I try to join and they still keep talking without considering me much.
Yeah. So how do you think you can get the people in the group who've already started the conversation to acknowledge as you enter the conversation?
No matter how much I try, probably they also need to know me. I mean, I had experience like that, so that's why I feel like.
Yeah. Any ideas from people in the room? If you're entering an existing conversation, how can you get the other people to kind of like acknowledge that you're wanting to slip into the conversation?
I have a question.
What's that?
Ask a question.
Ask a question.
When there's a pause in the conversation, just hey, I had a question.
Or maybe just add on to the existing conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can just say the good point that you brought up, and I would just add on to it.
Yep. Adding on to the existing conversation. Any other ideas?
I met a lot of IMSIM students actually at the iSchool fair, and a lot of you did a really good job of like, hey, my name is Dean, and this is another person in the first year cohort. This is Nayan, and that was a really good way. Like, if you want to have like a career fair buddy, and you guys can like share recruiter time, basically. That's a good way to get
Help
into
each
the
other
circle.
out. You feel a little less nervous then if you're sharing the nervousness together, right? Another way, if it's feasible for you, is you can initiate that kind of handshake, right? So if you can slip by like somewhere relatively near the recruiter, even if someone's already having a conversation, you can reach out and say, oh, is it okay if I join this conversation, right? And then they might be like, oh yeah, sure. Or like, oh, actually, like we're having a pretty private conversation. Rarely does that happen at a career fair, right? But that kind of gives them the opportunity to respond as well if they wish.
All right, I'm going to stop this now just because we have a classroom coming in. But yeah, thank you everyone for attending this. Yeah, check out the Career Center page for all the career fairs, and feel free to contact us at icareers@uw.edu.